Welcome to The Exchange. I'm Rob Cox of Reuters Breaking Views. Today we're going to talk about cars and Italy. I have as my guest Jennifer Clark, who just wrote a book called Mondo Agnelli, which is the story of Fiat, Chrysler, and the family behind it, the Agnellis. And I'm also joined by Anthony Curry, who covers automobiles with us at Breaking Views. So, Jennifer, it's kind of an opportune moment to have you here.
Yeah.
Because Fiat just this week has snagged another 5% of Chrysler by meeting some of the requirements with the U.S. Treasury to produce a small car.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to be out in Detroit. This is kind of an interesting story about the automotive industry that tells us basically about how capacity has to shrink, right?
Yeah.
Where does it play out? I mean, they've got 58.5% now. They got to take the whole thing over, don't they?
They already have management control. Marchionne he put in a new management team in July, so it's being run as one company. I don't think they're in a huge hurry to do the merger.
Right.
They want to get the right price, the right timing. I mean, they're already calling the shots anyways. But it will obviously be a big step when they do the merger because it brings up the issue of where the company will be based, which in Italy is a hugely contentious political.
Yeah, what's the view? I mean, so 41.5% now is owned by a healthcare trust, right? I mean, the Fiat's now basically taken everything, all the other equity.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony, you have some thoughts on this healthcare trust. I mean, what do they want out of the deal?
Well, they want to get as much money as possible. They obviously the union, when Chrysler went into bankruptcy, they put all of the healthcare obligations that Chrysler had for them into the bankruptcy and got their 41.5% stake, or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
And they want to get as much money out of that as possible, obviously. And based on current valuations, it's worth what, $3.5 billion?
3.3 something.
Based on last year's valuation, obviously.
But of course, as you say, Jennifer, the Fiat wants to pay as little as possible for the stake. The healthcare trust wants to pay a lot, but Fiat doesn't it's not sort of, flush with cash.
No, and we're looking at a difficult year in Europe for Fiat. They don't have many new models. The economy in Europe, as we all know, is really bad this year.
Now they've come out with they've with some fanfare here. They've got this advertisement, with Jennifer Lopez, but it's not going really well for them. I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. So what do you think they're going to do? I mean, how do they try to square the circle between the valuation that one guy wants?
I think they're going to wait. I mean, I think they're going to hold off and just sit back and launch the cars. They're trying to make Jeep into a global brand. There's the Alfa Romeo launch.
Right.
There's the small car launch here in the U.S., which is really important. And I think they're not in any hurry. And they could decide also from one moment to the next, actually, if Marchionne can move very quickly.
You got to know Sergio Marchionne, I'm sure, pretty well doing the research for the book. What's your sense of this guy? He doesn't strike me as your typical Italian CEO.
No, I mean, he is, obviously his folks are Italian, but as we all know, he moved to Canada when he was a kid. So he's very informal. He has a fantastic training. He's a lawyer and accountant. He's also very good at reading people, which is something he's learned through the years. So you put it all together and you have a very efficient package in terms of being a CEO. I think he feels his Italian background gives him a certain emotional.
Right.
He gets really emotional at
times.
Oh,
does he?
Yeah, and he prizes that in people. It's part of the corporate culture, actually.
Does he play well outside? I mean, okay, he's Canadian, grew up in Canada, Italian by birth and parents and that kind of thing, lived in Switzerland for years. I mean, the issue, one of the things I've written about, and you and I worked together for years in Italy, was there was this lack of multinationals in Italy. I mean, there are great companies that specialize in certain industries, fashion, art, food, whatever, but engineering, but there aren't. I mean, this could be the moment that Italy has its first multinational.
Yeah, and Rob, the horrible thing is in Italy there's a lot of fear about Marchionne moving the corporate headquarters. So instead of people saying, come on, we're going to have a fantastic, be one of the first automotive multinationals in a country that has few of them.
Right.
People are saying, oh my God, why is he going into a conflict with the unions? What's he doing? He's going to ruin Fiat. He does not have a lot of public support right now.
It's funny. I mean, this week is the beginning of 2012 marks the first time that Fiat is not a dues-paying member of Confindustria, which is huge, right? It's a very Italian concept.
It's an Italian story,
but it's sort of it's sort of the beginning, if you will, of becoming de-Italianized.
Yeah, and it shows on Marchione's part and also on John Elkann, the shareholder, the Agnelli heirs.
No, that's
part.
really important. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Elkann. I mean, is he a pragmatic guy or is he sentimental?
Totally. He's very different from his grandfather, Johnny Agnelli, in obvious ways, not a jet setter. But also Johnny Agnelli had a very sentimental view of the family company. It was founded by his grandfather. He always told his nephews, the only way I'm going to get out of the auto industry is feet first, i.e., we won't go into it.
Right.
And whereas John just looks at it like a business.
Right.
He wants it to generate cash. He looks at return on capital. He's much less sentimental, and that's really what the company needs right now.
Yeah.
So what pushes them over the edge to decide if they would come out of Italy or take the headquarters out of Italy?
Well, again, it'll be what's best for the business, and it'll be where the stock market is, the pool of investors, the pool of capital.
I think Marchione is on the record saying something like that. Of course, it's ultimately going to be the family decision. How much control does Elkann have over his, now extended family?
Well, he has a lot. I mean, the way the Agnelli family runs, and this is what I explain in my book, is that one person is in control. So it's a family-owned company, but John Elkann is the actual shareholder.
Right.
He calls the shots. So what he decides goes. They decided in a sort of family council, but he doesn't have to convince the family to come on board.
Right, because he doesn't want to overrule them necessarily. He's got to get their consensus, but at the same time, he's got the veto, as it were.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And he's really behind Sergio's decision to create a global automaker, even if it means the family has to step back and will own a smaller stake, which to his grandfather would have been just
heresy,
horrible.
Because they have 30% of the business now.
Yeah.
And if you did a deal where you merge with Chrysler, say,
they'll go down.
then you go down.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you pay with cash.
They'll
but that's
still be a controlling shareholder, but they won't be, the absolute controlling shareholder.
So Anthony, even if they manage to get this merger done, Chrysler, Fiat, there's still so much overcapacity in the industry. I mean, we're going to see more deals, aren't we?
Absolutely. If you look in Europe, especially where you've got the overcapacity, Opel, got some analysts saying that Opel should shrink to half its size. It's got, 8 or 9% of the market in Europe at the moment. Make it half the size, some of the analysts say, and you make it a lot easier for them to make money for their parent, GM. Now, of course, Fiat was looking at getting Opel, 2-3 years ago. Yeah. They must be very happy they
still have
failed.
Those plans somewhere, I'm sure.
I'm sure they do. But they must be very happy they failed. But on the other hand, we're left with Fiat in Italy and parts of Europe, relatively small in the rest of Europe, and then Chrysler, which is very much a domestic company. So where's the international growth? We all know it's coming from Brazil. We all know it's coming from China. How do they get in there? Are they big enough to do that?
Right. So while we may be focusing on a Fiat Chrysler deal for the next year and a half, there's going to be another one down the road. Okay, last question, since you are an Italian expert. What's the mood out? I mean, we have been watching this post-Berlusconi, technocratic government, the bond market, everything, it looks quite difficult from here.
Terrible.
But you must have faith that the Italians will pull through.
Well, I do, because I saw when Italy was never going to join the euro, right? It joined the euro. So it's a country that, when it digs down, it's very resilient.
Right.
Business leaders, average Italians, taxpayers, they all realize that some huge reforms are coming down the pike. Labor reforms, people are going to have to work longer before they retire. Having said that, consumer spending is way down. Businesses are, all the uncertainty around the future of the euro is making it hard for businesses to plan investment. So
another reason it
really
might be better
difficult.
if you're an Italian company to be based outside of Italy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Interesting conversation. My guests today were Jennifer Clark, whose new book, Mondo Agnelli, is a story about Fiat, Chrysler, and the Agnelli family. I totally recommend you read it. And Anthony Curry from Reuters Breaking Views. I'm Rob Cox, and please watch us next week for another edition of The Exchange.